Gentlemen, I am back again for another epic video game video, and it's not Birdie! Oh my goodness, this is fucking incredible! Today I'll be covering a very interesting game I found while peering into the depths of Steam, and it doesn't have too many reviews on it. Dungeons of Blood and Dream. A schizophrenic roguelite with purposefully obtuse mechanics, more on that later, with a beautiful soundtrack and beautiful characters to boot. This will be the first of a special event on the channel, one that, in my head, I've been calling Crustebruary. Throughout the month of February, I'll be reviewing 4 of the most crusty, confusing, and insane games I've found, and this is the first of them. Dungeons of Blood and Dream, as I said, is a first-person roguelite dungeon crawler. The story is relatively simple, so we're throwing it in the intro. You are a blood wizard, and another wizard is jealous of your power or angry with how you use them, and has trapped you in his magical mind prison. You have been stripped of most of your memories, including your spells, and must find a way to free yourself. Along the way, you'll make friends, enemies, and slowly discover who you truly are. A sadistic warmonger that kills not only for sport, but for entertainment. My favorite aspect of the game is that the intro screen acts as a prime gatekeeping method against any zoomer that dares to play this, because it's a big-ass text scroll with a silly face speaking those same words. Abandon all hope, ye who doom scroll. The general gameplay loop is thus. As soon as you click start on the main menu, you are thrown straight into the game. You start with a broken sword and must kill enemies found throughout the rooms to get gold, potions, and occasionally, the meaning of the universe. Buy and collect rings to gain incredible abilities, find the boss room of the current floor, then die. This is where the roguelite portion comes into play. When you kill a boss, and sometimes normal enemies too, you get a dream sphere. These act as a persistent currency between runs that you use to pray to various gods to get permanent stat buffs. These are the typical sort of roguelite upgrades: more health, more strength, cheaper magic, etc. Then, repeat the process until you find a way out of the mind prison. I'm aware this may sound simple, but trust me, that's the explanation I give to my family members, which is usually followed by the question, "Where are my grandbabies?" There's far more nuance to just about every part of the game. It takes a lot of RPG tropes and flips or twists them to be something far more unique. Before I really get yapping, I'm going to preemptively say, if this sounds like an enjoyable experience to you but you're on the fence, go play it. This game is fucking incredible. It's cheap, and you definitely get your money's worth in terms of content. Now, to really begin the review, we're going to start with the HUD. Before you can understand the finer mechanics of the game, you first need to understand the HUD, because at first glance, this shit looks strange. The bottom right corner houses the minimap, which can also be brought to the center of your screen by pressing the tab key. It's very simple, but conveys all the necessary information. The putrid-looking gauge above your minimap is your health bar. It goes down when you get hit by the booglies. The bottom left corner has your gold count, which can only be spent in shops. To the right of it is a disembodied head that has no actual explanation, even the game manual doesn't mention it, so I'm gonna assume it's some kind of inner dialogue. It will identify any object in front of you, usually directly stating what it does. Above your gold count are the voices in your head. They are technically the souls of less fortunate people stuck in your mind prison, so that's just like a common thing, evidently. They will share their thoughts on any ring you are currently looking at, which sometimes acts as a hint for what the ring does.
Revolting. Lovely. Family.
Every other bit of the HUD is just garnish. If you think it's too restrictive, there is a setting to increase your FOV to make it more comfortable. This section will focus both on how your character will change over time and the multiple facets of the combat system in the game. You can kind of view it like subsections within one larger category. To start with, let's talk about Dream Spheres. As I mentioned in the intro of the video, Dream Spheres drop from enemies and bosses and allow you to get permanent upgrades by praying to the statues of gods in the hub area. The gods and their effects are as follows. Ogier, the god of making, will mend your starting sword, so you don't start each run with a shit-ass weapon. Lurog, the golem god, increases the amount of summonable creatures you can have. Barrow, the god of magic, will decrease the health cost of your spells. Amlel, the god of dream, increases your health, and Foran, the god of war, will increase your strength. The amount of dream spheres needed to upgrade your stats does increase pretty dramatically after each upgrade, but they are very much worth the cost. Next, we're going to go over the ring system. There are many rings in this game, and they don't function like rings do in other RPGs. Most of the time, a ring just acts as a stat boost, usually for magic. Taking Barony as an example, you can wear one ring, there's a small variety of rings, and they all have one effect that they can give. In this game, almost every ring has multiple effects, which changes based on which finger you put it on. You have 8 fingers, but not every ring has 8 effects. Some have 2, some have 4, and the most I've seen on a ring is 5. If you find a new ring you would like to put on a finger that is currently occupied, the original ring will be destroyed. This creates a unique dynamic of deciding which finger to put what ring on, and whether certain bonuses are better than others. A good example of how the effects can differ is the small ring. One of the voices in your head will say,
I like it on a small finger.
This acts as a hint to put it on your pinky finger. However, if you put it on your left pinky, you gain more health, but if you put it on your right pinky, you gain more strength. There are some rings which, to my knowledge, can only be obtained by making some kind of sacrifice. If you find a finger altar, you can sacrifice one of your fingers, permanently removing it from your hand, and it will give you a ring. 2 of the times I've done this, it's given me a homunculus ring, which will summon these little fuckers every time you do a specific action. There's also the Torum idol, where you can sacrifice your current sword to get a ring. This will force you to fight unarmed, which, while novel, makes things significantly more difficult. The next thing to talk about is the brains. These will randomly drop from enemies, and when collected, will unlock a new concept. This seems cryptic at first, but makes much more sense when you talk to an NPC. There are several scattered throughout the game, such as the skeleton that acts as a merchant in every store, a gold knight, a gold warlock, etc. When you speak with them, you can ask them specific conversation topics. These are the concepts that the brains unlock. At first, your only options are you and this place, but your options will grow to include topics like life, death, time, and gold. The reason these are important to character growth is because some of these dialogue options will unlock new weapons, eyes, and occasionally a new level. There's even a special NPC named the Demon that you can only find if you can find one of these summoning circles, then cast the spell Summon Demon. Half the conversation topics you have, he is thoroughly disinterested in, but he has a lot to say on the more abstract concepts. The manual, however, will say to not believe his lies. The next thing to go over is the melee weapons. All melee weapons in this game are swords or daggers and are held in the right hand. You start with a broken sword, which is supposedly the one you used before being trapped. Melee weapons have several stats, being thrust damage, cut damage, knockback, attack speed, and reach. This more or less comes down to the question of, would you like to stab someone or slash them? There's also the fencing positions to consider. I know that sounds bad, but stay with me now. When you move right, your hand moves to the right fencing position. This I think, is better for slashing attacks. When you move left, your arm moves more to the center of the screen and is better for thrusting attacks. This may not actually be true, the game doesn't really explain how they change things, but I can tell there's some kind of difference here because your reach changes based on which stance you're in. Realistically, you can probably just ignore this, it's literally just a bell curve type of thing. You also have a kick, which knocks enemies away from you. Good for if you need some breathing room. Very quickly, I'll go over the eye powers. Your left arm has a magic prosthetic eye jammed into it, and you can unlock more. The first one is a barrier that gives invincibility for a second or so. This is the most practical, but the others aren't useless. There's also a healing eye, which heals a large portion of health, but has a long cooldown. Then there's the hawk eye, which it's a fucking bird. You summon a hawk, which flies to your arm, and then can be sent out to start attacking everything in the room. It's a little slow, but the extra damage is very nice. Oh, and by the way, when you use your eye power and it's on cooldown, the actual model of the eye on your left hand will close, then open when it's ready to be used again. Rounding up this section of the video is the magic system. Being a wizard, you once had spells, but due to the current circumstances, seem to have forgotten them. Throughout the floors of the dungeon, you can find blood pools, which will show the sigil combination for a spell. To cast these spells, you need to scroll the mouse wheel, which will then scroll through the sigils on your left hand. Middle click to commit a sigil, and on the fourth sigil, the spell will be cast. There's not a lot of spells in the game, but they are all useful in some way, and in most cases are extremely powerful. Keep in mind, each sigil committed will cost a chunk of your HP. There is no mana in this game. The spells range from Summon Golem, which, sure, that can be defined as a golem. Curse Weapon, which just increases the damage your weapon does. Wizard Scream, which, Swarm of Rats, etc., etc. With all of these spells, how are you expected to remember all of their sigil combos? Well, that's why you use the in-game notebook. Press the N key and your notebook will open. Your mouse will now act as a pen and allow you to put your wonderful imagination to work. Of course, in bloody ink, or just straight up blood. You don't need to just write spells though, you can write literally whatever you want in here, because this notebook persists between runs. I'd say it's best for spell combos, riddle answers, and a potion list. Whoa, hey, potion! There are indeed potions in this game. Potions in most games are quite simple. They will almost always just be named after the effect that they give you, not too much to it. Are they simple in this game?
No.
Potions are randomly dropped by enemies and can have a positive or negative effect, but it will not tell you directly what the potion is. Instead, the text box will say the potion smells like two things, like sweat and meat or urine and seawater. The combinations for potions are consistent across runs, and when you drink a potion, every subsequent potion of the same kind will be identified. However, each time you relaunch the game, or do a new run, I can't remember which, your potion memory resets. This gives another incentive to use the notebook. The next thing to talk about is the main levels. They have assortments of unique enemies with some overlap, and each level has a unique boss at the end, so I'm gonna lump them all together here. The first level is the dungeons. It's the most standardized level, especially when compared to some of the others. Goblins are regularly spawned here, but no one likes them, so they get put in the starvation box. Spiders and slimes act as smaller targets, both making environmental hazards as they move. Floating skulls and eye turrets shoot projectiles, though they are very slow. Skeletons are probably the most dangerous enemy here because they do a surprisingly large amount of damage, but this is alleviated by the comedy factor of their pain screams. The boss of the dungeon is the Wizard Lord. He sends out seizure flames in a couple different patterns and then stops to let you hit him a few times before burning your retinas again. Good level, good boss. Next is the Slime Pits. This level is noticeably more green and has pits of acid that melt your health bar in like 2 seconds. Pots are replaced by large pustules that make a very gross noise, but otherwise function the same. The enemies change here as well. There's a lot more slimes, but there are also large slimes, which split into 2 normal slimes when killed. There are also slime-covered skeletons, which are harder to kill since the first attack against them will have no knockback, as it just removes the slime from them. The most annoying enemy here is this stupid fucker, the Slime Wizards. They actively run away from you, leave puddles of acidic slime behind themselves, and shoot globules of whatever the fuck at you. I find great enjoyment in kicking them into spikes. The boss of the Slime Pits is the Slime King. Rather than becoming invincible while attacking like the Wizard Lord, he instead will hit you very hard with his giant sword, either in a downwards chopping motion or a sweeping attack. He also spawns slimes around him, but they're very rarely an issue. The Slime King is probably the first major difficulty filter for newer players, but after a few times, he's not that hard. Following the Slime Pits is the river. This level has, in my opinion, the best track in the whole game. But don't let the chill atmosphere fool you. This place is insidious. Spikes will generate much more frequently, sometimes covering like half of the fucking room. This is particularly evil because the beautiful crimson water acts as a camouflage for the spikes, as well as the giant Venus flytraps, which I did not mention until now because I'm really fucking bad at scripting videos. So be very careful when navigating the level. The enemy pool is minimally different from the previous levels. Eye turrets show back up sometimes, as well as puffermen and skeletons, but newly introduced are the eyeball demons and coin creatures. Coin creatures aren't special, they run after you and punch, but eyeball demons are a lot more dangerous. They shoot an orb that does quite a big chunk of damage and will follow you around the room until it hits something. The boss for the river is the Necromancer. She occasionally fires off a black orb and regularly summons skeletons to chase after you. When you try to engage in melee combat with her, she just fucking struts away like nothing's happening.
Yes, bitch.
The forest! The forest is the first of the final levels, more on that in a bit, and is the biggest difficulty jump so far. Many spikes, many walls, many challenges. Coin creatures and skeletons make a return, but the main enemies of this level are the torso guys and gnomes. Gnomes are genuinely the work of a malignant djinn, their behaviors forged in the very bowels of man's nightmares. They fire small red bullets from a rifle of sorts and will do cartwheels just to get away from you. I feel no pity for them. They all deserve to be thrown into the brazen bowl. Torso guys, on the other hand, are not nearly as bad. They can do big damage with the Morning Star they carry, but otherwise are just tanky bastards. The boss of the forest is the Hunter. He summons a giant pack of wolves that erratically chase you, while he throws down caltrops to catch you off guard. I think he can also shield himself between some of his attacks, but it's kinda hard to tell. Now, killing the hunter does something special. Once he's killed for the first time, a permanent mechanic is then added, where the boss of any given level can be changed to instead be the killer. You can know this ahead of time by checking the mystic orbs found in levels. They give a description of the boss you're going to fight, but if it says you see nothing, that means the killer is near, and he's going to get you. The killer is a simple but terrifying boss. After he spawns, he turns invisible and remains so until you hit him. He will then chase you very quickly around the arena, and if you don't attack him enough, he will turn invisible again. Anywhom, killing the hunter leads us to the first ending most players will get, but it does not lead to our freedom. Quite the opposite, in fact. The wizard prepared for this, and so he traps us in an even smaller mind prison made of meat to be left here for eternity. This is ending 3 of 4. The other 3 endings all require secret levels. And so, as you could probably expect with this sort of game, the majority of the levels are secrets, accessed through portals hidden behind slightly differently textured walls. The most annoying part of this aspect of the game is that none of the portals are guaranteed to spawn, so some luck is required to get the remaining 3 endings. Let's start with ending 1 and how it is accessed. To get the first ending of the game, you need to figure out the name of the wizard who trapped you, and spell it with these slabs in the hub room. To get these letters, you must read the riddles dropped by each boss. The answer to each one is a letter of his name. You can only get 4 of them through the normal levels, so you need to go to 2 secret levels to get the rest. The first of these is Frog World. It has garish textures on the walls and floor, and has 2 unique enemies, the Worm Servants and Experiments. Worm Servants move around randomly and erect spikes from their body, which damages the player on contact. The Experiments are just a harder version of the floating skulls introduced in the dungeons. The Worm Lord acts as the final challenge of Frog World, but I use challenge very loosely. There are 3 of them, but they each are just a bigger version of the Worm Servants. They don't chase you, and just use spikes for damage. This is ironic because the boss is easy as shit, but drops a lot more loot because each individual worm drops the same amount as a normal boss. The second and necessary secret level is the Blood Rooms. This place is pure evil. The 3 enemies present are blood skeletons, blood spiders, and blood slimes. Each one leaves a trail of red goo that damages the player, and they act as stronger variants of their standard counterpart. The boss here is the Blood Golem, which is yet another boss with 3 copies of the same thing. This time, it is devilish copies of your golem. They even throw the same kind of projectile at you, and just like the Worm Lord, each one drops loot. Now that you have gotten each riddle, and hopefully solved it yourself, you should have deduced the wizard's name is Limbach. Go back to the hub, put his name into the slabs, and interact with the thing on the cliff outside. You now have unlocked the Caves of Limbach. This is accessed by going through the 4 main levels again, but now after the hunter fight, there will be a second portal, this one leading to the Caves of Limbach. There are only 2 enemies here, the Limbach Demon and Limbach's Flying Skull. The demons are just a stronger variant of the normal eyeball demon, but they shoot their orbs way faster. The same can be said for the Flying Skulls, which I would argue are even more annoying. This floor is especially difficult because every enemy is just one of these 2, so you have to dodge and weave through a barrage of projectiles to get a couple hits in on these fuckers. Once you've explored the whole floor and hopefully gained some more power, you must now face Limbach. Limbach is the hardest boss fight in the game. He'll stay on one wall and spawn flying skulls to harass you. At the same time, he'll fire off waves of skulls, this time with a fire texture, and if you get close, he'll do a couple different melee attacks. Sometimes he'll teleport from one wall to another, so you gotta follow his green ass across the room. Once you've defeated him, you go through the final portal and arrive back at the hub room. Now, the sinister vibe is replaced with one of tranquility. Outside, the sky is a pure, cloudless blue, and a giant flamingo waits to take you away. This brings you to ending 1, Escape. The next ending to get is ending 4. To get this, you'll need to find one of these idols of Gorok, the coin god, and give it 100 coins. This will open a portal to the Gilded Halls. This level is entirely themed around money and riches. There are annoying bitches that shoot coins at you, evil ball gremlins that parry your attacks, and the coin creature. Here, you fight the Gold Wizard. He will throw coins at you from a distance and try to give you a concussion with a large coin, and when he's around half health, will put a shield around himself and summon 4 golden skeletons. Once they're killed, he re-engages with the fight and is promptly killed. This does open a portal to the next level, but remember, ending 4. So, use the Grand Jump spell to get out of the boss arena, then go all the way back to the starting room, where a portal to the Wax Temple will have opened. The Wax Temple is the first level in this game to be actually kind of unnerving. Since this is in the world of Dream, I have to guess this place is literally made of nightmares. The 2 new enemies here are these fetal salamanders and wax knights. The salamander enemy will run away from you sometimes, and then other times puke a trail of acid. The Wax Knights function similarly to the torso guy from the forest, tanky with an implied higher level of combat experience. The boss of the Wax Temple is the Wax Golem. For being the last boss required for an ending, it's kind of on the easier side. It only has a few melee attacks, where each one has the golem stretching its arms or legs out in a nonsensical manner, all in an attempt to kill you. Once you kill it and go through the portal, you are brought into a nameless chamber, where you can see the voices in your head trapped behind barred windows, and a large red sword floating in the center of the room. When you interact with the sword, it plunges into a coin atop a pentagram, and the room bursts into flame, with text on screen reading,
Forge on to the flame of reason.
This grants ending 4, Attained, where you technically escape Limbach's prison, but not in the typical sense. Instead, you achieve spiritual enlightenment, and are able to ascend to a higher form within the world of Dream. The last ending to get is complete bullshit, and probably the only thing I don't like about the game. To get ending 2, you will need to get both Frog World and the Blood Rooms in one run. Then, when you get to the forest, a portal to the Black Crystal is guaranteed to spawn. This is stupid, because secret level exits are already random, but for this one specific ending, you need 2 of them. Completionists everywhere are mad coping right now. The Black Crystal isn't too special by itself. It introduces no new enemies and mainly houses eye demons, skeletons, and the occasional coin creature. The boss is also somewhat underwhelming. It is the Gold Knight. He kind of just flounders around in your general direction, but then you get to the Black Crystal itself, where you touch it, and it kills you. Ending 2 has you technically escaping Limbach's mind prison by experiencing true death, so you're free in a sense. There are 2 more secret floors which would have gone here, but I'm working with a very tight schedule here, and in the 15 or so hours I put into the game, neither of those 2 floors have generated, so
Fuck you!
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Dungeons of Blood and Dream. It is a strange, confusing, and sometimes obtuse game, but that is what makes it beautiful. I love the sort of pessimistic attitude that a lot of these characters have, the strangely implemented magic system, the finicky melee combat, all wrapped in these beautifully composed dungeon synth tracks. It makes me appreciate living. I think the only thing I don't like about the game is how secret levels are implemented. But you know what? It's okay. Nothing is perfect. Nothing ever has. The next video for Crust-Ebruary will be coming out next week. And if you thought this game was weird, well, you won't want to miss this.